world torn apart by disaster, a new society has emerged. Scarred survivors band together, their shared humanity, the only thing that keeps them pushing on against the hordes. But amongst this chaos, a new hero has risen. In the tumult of survival, an idiot on a Segway rides around with his tackle in the wind and asks people about board games. This is the Guild.
Starring Ben Maddox as incomprehensible Jeff and Steven Syrek as the truculent fundamentalist. What will they talk about this week? I've no doubt that whatever comes out of Ben's mouth, and believe me, there is no sarcasm attached here, will be super interesting. And there's no doubt whatsoever that Steve won't roll his eyes every time he opens his bloody mouth. You know what? This might be the cleverest show on the internet.
I'm concerned.
With what, Ben?
Well, the fact is, ever since you spent time communing with the cryogenically frozen head of Meepy Petey,
Yeah?
I'm rather concerned that you've been evangelizing, nay, proselytizing, and there is a small yet very energetic clique of Meepy Petey head worshippers.
Ben, when I go out into the compound and I hold aloft the disembodied head of Meeple Pete...
Do you take it out of the cryo tube?
Are you familiar with the myth of Parsifal?
You're gonna have to help me with that, Steve.
What was that noise?
That was a secret sign that I can't tell you about.
So essentially I only reveal the head of Meeple Pete on certain special occasions.
Okay.
It gives power to me and my followers. Right.
They're your followers.
I mean, it gives power to all of those who would follow the head of Meeple Pete. Ben,
okay.
Is what I meant to say.
You're not going for a...
Anyway, let's just say the disembodied head of Meeple Pete has its own charisma, and I am simply its agent.
Well, tell us some of the rituals that your not followers have to embark on when they're, praying to the head.
I mean, I feel a little bit bashful discussing the rituals to a non-initiate like yourself.
Well, how do I become initiated?
Well, first of all, you have to go into the inner sanctum.
Okay.
The holiest of holies.
What's your dormitory?
Yeah, exactly. And it fucking stinks in there, by the way.
You don't wash much, do you?
I don't wash. I mean, who has time to wash? We're constantly trying to fend off the zombies.
I wash.
With what? I mean, you're naked all the time. You don't really need to wash.
Well, I wash with the breeze of the air against my nethers.
Yeah, I was going to say, the cold winter air that we've been experiencing lately scours your body clean.
Exactly, of all horrendousness.
Yeah, I don't like the cold. I wear layer upon layer, and I don't wash my body. I don't wash the clothes. As you can see, I don't shave. I don't trim. I don't groom. For some reason...
So you mean your man bush is sticking out the side of your speeders?
You want me to show you? Have a look.
Oh my God!
Yeah, for some reason, this look is popular with my group. And they've all affected it, as you've seen.
I've noticed that some of them have started to grow ponytails and big beards and affect spectacles.
So if you'd like to join the group, the first thing you have to do...
Okay.
Grow a beard.
Okay. I can do that.
Get a ponytail. Get some spectacles.
Yeah, okay.
And then you have to survive for 1 hour in the holiest of holies, undergoing the trial by strength or trial by whatever it is. I can't exactly tell you what it is.
Is this me perpetuism?
It's an ordeal.
You have to go through an ordeal. Do you have to ride a bull?
I would liken it to the experience of riding a bull.
What? Inhaling your reek for an hour?
You're getting very close to the requirement, yes.
I don't have to put
I don't air the room out. Did I mention that?
Yeah, you've mentioned it before. You seem quite obsessed with stink.
You remember when I arrived and I asked specifically for a room with a window?
Yes.
And I explained to you why this was necessary and that the situation that now obtains would come to pass.
Right.
Did I get a room with a window?
No.
And why?
There aren't windows. They've been de-invented.
How do you de-invent it? You mean de-vented?
I don't take the pun. But, it's like, you had the times back in the past and they had concrete and swords and that. And then after the classical period, you had the period of Abrahamic nonsense, when no one pursued intellectual pursuits and we lost all technology. And then it rose up again until the computers ate us all, and now here we are. Windows don't exist because Windows have been de-invented.
Not even a transom.
No.
Not even a louver, Ben.
Not even an oubliette, Steve.
I would kill for an oubliette.
I tell you. I've got a t-shirt with more oubliettes, but spelled M-O-A-R, like cool Twitter speak.
I remember when we used to be, we used to act like we were really cool by deliberately misspelling words.
Exactly.
Do you know what the hackers do? You probably haven't heard this one. So, you know when you're like, do you remember keyboards? Like, kind of barely?
I mean, I do. I used to like smack my cock on them.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're smacking your cock on the keyboard and you're really excited, you do like a lot of exclamation points. Like,
yes.
Let's say like you want to express excitement to somebody.
Exactly.
How many exclamation points would you put at the end?
It depends how excited I am.
Like, let's say average excitement. How many?
9 is fine. 15's Smith teens.
So you do 15 exclamation points, but at the end, you put a number 1. Possibly 1 or 2 number 1s.
Okay.
Do you know why?
Why?
Because you are trying to communicate that you are so excited that at the end of your string of interminable exclamation points, you accidentally released the shift key too soon. And because the exclamation point is usually over the 1, at least on US keyboards, you end up with like a bunch of exclamation points and then a couple of 1s at the end.
Right.
This used to happen by mistake. Now people do it deliberately.
You mean then people did it deliberately and now keyboards don't exist?
Exactly what I meant.
I tell you, your adherence to the premise is thick, the premise is solid, and it works.
So if you ever make it into the archives, do you remember when they like people saw the end was coming and they just like printed the entire internet?
Yeah.
I assume most of that's been eaten by the zombies.
And burnt.
If you ever get back in there and you notice this phenomenon, now you'll know where it came from.
It's exciting.
Useful is what it is.
So, are you wondering what my question was for the compound?
Was there a question this week?
Yeah.
All right, and how did you do? I mean, we had some bad weather in Berlin.
Berlin?
Where are we in this premise?
We are in a compound.
We had some bad weather
country.
in Futurescape.
Exactly. Bentown, as we like to call it.
Is the compound called Bentown?
No, I call it Bentown.
What does the leader call it?
The leader.
Does he call it Bentown?
He certainly doesn't call it Bentown. But I like to call it Bentown because it makes me feel important.
All right, so when you're rolling around Bentown on your Segway?
Yeah. So
what are you asking them?
So my question was, and I thought I'd go for something less, in difficult times the compound's been a bit, bombarded by religious fundamentalists, least of all the Meeper Peters.
Excuse me? Fundamentalists?
Yeah.
I wouldn't call the I don't want to say cult of Meeple Pete. The adoration of Meeple Pete. We are not a fundamentalist group.
Well, you say potato, I say religious fundamentalists.
Are you familiar with the Enlightenment?
Yeah.
It's like that.
Doesn't sound very enlightened.
The truth will set you free, Ben, but we'll talk about it later.
People walking around going, Petey, 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 wanna kiss the face on its ass, Petey, Petey. That doesn't sound...
I see you doing this every day at breakfast.
Your hymns are shit, is what I'm trying to say.
Anyway.
Your hers. Anyway, so the question was, I thought,
Yeah.
Who is your favourite designer and why? So
living or dead?
Before, they're all dead.
Yeah.
So before I get you to answer that question,
yeah,
I want to ask you another one.
Oh man, another question.
What's the purpose of a game designer, and do they differ in sort of creative purpose from other exponents of the arts?
It's actually a good question.
Thanks.
And I feel like I need to give you a good answer.
Give me a good answer.
You normally keep me in the private feed and people have to pay to listen to me.
Right.
Now this is like I'm totally exposed to the entire public, the entire gaming public, who will someday discover this recording.
The power of Pete compels you, Steve.
Are you still broadcasting these over the tannoy? Or
Yeah, over the tannoy.
They haven't finally put a stop to that?
No, there's like 80 odd people on the compound.
And they gather around.
Who sort of give me biscuits for the private stuff.
Yep.
But this is for everybody to listen to.
So I don't know when it was that game designers began to put their names onto board games. I can actually remember just barely in the 90s when I was gaming and Catan came out. And I think at a certain point I knew, and I don't know why, I think his name was on the game.
Right.
Klaus Teubner.
Or Teuber. I mean, it's up to you.
Teuber? See, you know what? Teubner, I think, is a set of German language ancient Greek dictionaries.
Nice.
And this is what lodges in my head. But yeah, Klaus Teuber. For some reason, I knew that the Settlers was associated with him, and I remember thinking at the time how odd it was for a game designer's name to be on the box, because who cares? Now it's commonplace. People sign games the way auteurs used to sign films, right?
Right.
Still. Well, used to still.
Well, I mean, so we go back to the Essen that we went to, and I witnessed you.
How would you describe that moment? Well, if you were to be charitable about it.
So when you met the Ragnar brothers, who had designed The History of the World, which is one of your favourite games, right?
Yeah. You still haven't played it.
I still haven't played it. I'm not sure if you were just yanking my chain, but you seemed genuinely sort of, not overwhelmed, that would be going far too far, but excited, invigorated to have met these people who had been a part of your youth, I guess. Am I
Yeah, I was not yanking your chain. When I played History of the World, I was unaware that there were designers. I mean, I grew up playing like Parker Brothers and Milton Bradley games. They didn't have designers. I mean, for all I knew, they were designed by committee. I have no idea how they came into the world.
Right.
History of the World was just another game like that to me. I guess Richard Garfield, even back then, his name was associated with Magic the Gathering and Robo Rally, but like these other train games that I liked, I didn't know who designed them, didn't care who designed them. And I don't think I even knew who designed History of the World until relatively recently. And the idea that I could actually meet the people who created it, I mean, it's hard to describe what that's like. I mean, it's one thing to meet a creator whom you admire, but it's another thing entirely to meet people that you didn't even know they existed. Like, you really care about the thing that they created, and it didn't even occur to you that you could ever meet the people responsible for it. And for me, this was, 30 years later, practically.
Which is super interesting, isn't it? Because I don't think that is a factor for people getting into the hobby now. Game designers are maybe not even quasi-celebrities now, right?
For a certain segment of gamers, I mean, I kind of wonder how much of it's marketing that they put their names on the boxes, and to what extent this is even driving anybody's purchasing decisions. I mean, for us, maybe.
I think it drives hobbyists' decisions, right?
Is that a big enough chunk of the market? I have no idea.
Well, for hobby games, that's pretty much everyone, right? But it's super interesting. So if you look at sort of a rising star, Elizabeth Hargrave, people are going to buy Mariposas because of her. Her little game...
I'll buy it because it has hexagons on the board.
Right. But her little game, Tussie Mussy, was successful because of her. Because what's really interesting is that what game designers have become is not these interchangeable people who could be a committee, but there is this notion of auteurism in game design now, right?
Yeah, I'm sure she has a following, but I hate to but you. Yeah, but will either of these games be even remotely as successful as Wingspan?
Well, that's not the point, though, is it?
I mean, if the question is, what was the question? What purpose do designers serve?
Yeah.
I don't know then if the answer would be that they actually do drive sales.
You don't think so?
I think probably not. I think to some extent, like small cults of personality can develop.
I think they absolutely do drive initial sales.
I think they probably drive sales a little bit, but not with the general public.
See, this is the point that's difficult, right? Because when we talk about gamers, we don't mean the general public.
Well, I mean drive sales in general, not among gamers. Among gamers, I think absolutely that it would drive sales. But like, what section of the market are just people like us.
Well,
Wingspan was huge.
Well, if you look at Splotter,
I'm looking at Splotter right now, in fact.
absolutely, it's us.
I have my hand gently resting on my copy of Roads and
I'd be
Books.
very careful because zombies find Splotter games particularly attractive for eating.
Then, if a zombie came between you and a Splotter game,
Oh, no doubt, Roads and Boats is still worth loads of money even in the apocalypse.
Sorry.
But if you look at someone like the Splotter guys, their entire market is hobbyists, right?
yeah, I would assume so.
Absolutely,
I would
their
assume
entire market. If you look at someone like...
except Food Chain Magnate, maybe.
I don't think... Can you imagine someone who's never played board games before picking up Food Chain Magnate and playing it? I mean, absolutely not. It's far too difficult.
It's the only one that's even close to being... It's like if you were to pick one that could be mainstream. I mean, I don't think that it is, but it's almost gotten to that point. Maybe bust now that it's been printed by Capstone.
I mean, I think what's super interesting is when I talk about designers' purpose and do they drive sales and blah, 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 I don't think about the general public because I don't think of these games. And I think Wingspan has sort of, to an extent, gone over. It's sold quite a lot. It's gone over. The one game that has come out from a sort of recognised designer who is definitely an auteur in the business and is an incredible game brain that has really gone over into the mainstream and into the public is Codenames.
Right, but people probably don't know the designer or couldn't even pronounce his name.
That's what's super interesting, isn't it?
But they know Codenames. Codenames is the brand.
Right.
Vlada Chvatal is not the brand.
But what's super interesting is I think films and games sort of share that same characteristic, right? So it's only people who are into film that follow directors, per se. Unless they're a certain Tarantino, Spielberg...
Fincher, maybe.
Fincher probably not, maybe 10 years ago, but, Scorsese, something like this. But mostly people go for the star of the film or what the kind of film looks like. They watch the trailer and go, that seems entertaining. They don't follow the director. And I think game designers and film directors occupy a very similar space in that the creation of a game is a collaborative thing with the designer and the developer and the publisher and the artist and the person who decides on components, all of this. And the film director is the same thing. It's the director and the writer and the DOP and the set designer and the costume designer.
It's a reasonable analogy.
And I think if you look at books, for instance, they seem to be far less collaborative as works as compared to games, even though we assume games are just done by one person. But if you ever speak to anyone in the industry, it's very clear it's not. It's a collaborative process.
I think some people are attracted by IP. Some people probably by an attractive box. Okay, you haven't played Star Wars Rebellion, have you?
I haven't.
Okay, I hear it's great. I haven't played it either. I hear it's great. Do you know who designed it?
No, but that's one of the...
What about War of the Ring?
Yes.
I don't know who designed it.
Francesco Nepatello and some other Italian.
I can't believe you even know that name. What else has he designed?
Loads of stuff. So Hunt for the Ring he designed, and he's designed a few other games.
All of them in the Lord of the Rings movie?
No, not all of them, but he has, because he works for Ares Games. He's like Ares Games in-house designer.
I mean, I would even argue that this is like real niche knowledge that you have. I didn't know who he was, and I don't even care, right? I wouldn't necessarily buy one of his games because he designed it.
But you do have designers, right, on your list. So when they come out with a game, you will buy it.
But I'm like kind of agreeing with you that like I don't remember who directed. In the same sense, I've seen all the Avengers movies. I don't know who directed any of them except Joss Whedon, I suppose.
Directed some of them, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and did Bryan Singer? I'm not even sure. I don't remember. I don't even care. Again, I don't care because I'm interested in the IP. You know, they're spectacles. They're very entertaining. If you had War of the Ring or Rebellion without that IP, would I enjoy it as much? I don't know. I think not.
But you know who designed High and Low, right?
High and Low? You mean Kurosawa?
Yeah, you know who directed Videodrome. You know who directed... I literally can't think of a bloody film now. Wild at Heart, for instance, all of these sorts of things. And I think I think the kind of games that we're into, we look at the design and we trust the pedigree. So I've been waiting for a big box Vlaada Chvátil game now since the last one he did, which was, Christ, the one you've got, Tashkalar, right?
Is that really the last one?
Big box one, I think. And so I've been waiting for that since I've been in the hobby. And I will buy that game, sight unseen, because I think he's...
Are you aware of him working on one?
Yes, apparently there's one coming out of Essen.
Okay, so we have roads and boats in front of us. If you weren't a gamer, would you be attracted by this box?
You know what? Possibly.
Why?
Well, because the art...
Do you think most people would be attracted by this box?
Well...
Huge box, very expensive game, very little text on the box to tell you anything about it.
But if you look at the art, what the art does not imply is super heavy pick-up delivery Euro game, right?
It is a super heavy pick-up and delivery Euro game.
And the picture makes it look...
Possibly it invented the concept.
Right, and the picture makes it look like a kid's game. And it's called Roads and Boats. It actually implies something very simple. And it's only because we have the knowledge and we know the designers that we know that it's not going to be what it implies with the box.
Kids' games don't cost €100.
Well, this is the point. The people who are sort of inclined by the art think, oh, I'll pick this up for Johnny. I'm going to pay £100, right?
I mean...
And if you know the first thing about it, then you know what it is.
Yeah, and allow me to develop your point. Not only would I buy any game Splotter makes, I've gone to the effort to try and acquire the back catalog, like painstakingly.
Why? That's an interesting question. Why?
I really enjoy their work, and I want to entirely familiarize myself with it. Just in the same way that 10 years ago, when I was still living in New York and there was a Kurosawa festival on, I went to every single showing because I had seen several of his movies and I was already interested, but many of them I hadn't seen. I wasn't going to buy them. I mean, back then I would have had to buy the DVDs, and some of them you just couldn't see.
So why? What is it about the attraction?
This desire to collect, to be comprehensive. I've always been like this kind of... Personally, I've been like this kind of completist.
But why some artists and not others? What is it about Joris and your own that makes you want to... And you're a bit of a Vital Lacerda completist too.
Well, I'm wondering about that recently. Yeah, kind of. I actually appreciate him a great deal. I mean, him and Eno Tool kind of as a duo, because I find the aesthetic experience of playing a Lacerda game counts for something. Playing a Splotter game is not exactly an aesthetic experience. I mean, it's like very hipster, in the same way that you want to be the person maybe who likes the most obscure band or is a fan of the most obscure filmmaker. If you're a fan of Splotter games, then you're into something that is unknown to even people in the hobby.
To what degree do you think it's that for you?
I don't think that this has no meaning to me. It just I seem to end up kind of in that category a lot with a lot of things.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
And I want you to answer it honestly.
Because all of my other answers have been...
No. But the thing is, it's the kind of question I'm going to ask, and usually people will give a certain type of answer, and it's generally dishonest.
How long have you known me, Ben?
And I want you to give me an honest answer and not take into consideration how much of a douchebag you sound if the answer is honest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you have a more exquisite and refined taste than most people?
No, I don't believe in this. I used to think that probably about certain things, but no. I mean, people like what they like. You're talking to the person who enticed you into reviewing the Game of the Year from 2018, Kaka Alarm.
Yes, but that's hipster ironic bullshit, right?
Kind of?
Yeah, you bought it. You didn't buy it because you were interested in playing the game.
I think it's amazing that it exists. And it is actually fun.
I think it's a dreadful thing that it exists. But, so,
No, I
There
really
is no-
I
there is-
don't think this is about taste.
You don't think it's about taste?
No, do you think it's about taste?
Well-
I mean, do you feel that you have more exquisite taste?
I'm going to be honest now. I think the shit I like tends to be better than the shit most people like. And whether that's right or not, the thing is you can't prove that objectively, but I'm drawn to things like Splotter, not because they're inherently hipster, although of course that helps, but because they do something that is utterly unique.
I'm probably
And
like,
yet utterly functional,
Yeah.
which is the weird, because often people who operate at the edges of things, they're very enticing, but fundamentally fail. Whereas the amazing thing about Splotter is they approach their games in a completely unique way that have kind of no relevance to anything else that's going on, and yet they succeed mostly, which is insane.
because they're very good at it. I mean, I think most
Well, because they're very good at it, yes.
and most independent designers are probably not going to succeed. I mean, they have managed to pull something off that's quite incredible. They're not mainstream. They don't care to be mainstream. And I'm not trying to be like all hipster about my board game interests, but I guess I do tend to be attracted to these like marginal figures because I don't know, they have like the latitude to explore things that maybe you wouldn't be able to do if you expected to be mainstream. If you wanted to sell 10,000 games, you probably wouldn't make Antiquity or Great Zimbabwe. Even Food Chain Magnate, I don't think it's not going to be huge.
Having spoken to Joris a couple of times, it's clear that he could walk away from board games at any minute. If the company became non-viable, he could walk away.
I mean, I spoke to him too, and I was pretty sure he wanted to walk away from me.
Right.
They don't cultivate anything, right?
Right, and that gives you, if you have the financial security to be able to diddle around with this sort of stuff, that gives you an incredible freedom, right? I look at someone like Tony Boydell, for instance, who does themes that are not part of sort of mainstream gaming in many ways, although sort of Snowdonia is a train game. I look at the new games he's designing, especially one based on the British shipping forecast and the shipping regions, which is incredibly niche, incredibly Tony in many ways, in that it's quite quaint, very British, very homely and comfortable. But the fact that he's not a professional, the fact that he is still a hobbyist, and I mean, because his design is so good, that is not to damn him with faint praise. His games are fantastic, but he can trammel certain areas that people who derive the 100% of their income from game design from. He can trammel other areas to them because if it doesn't work, well, he might lose some money, but he doesn't lose his livelihood, right? Mm-hmm. So, before we go into the people I spoke to,
I could go on this topic though.
I am going to ask you, I'm going to put you down, you're going to let me know
Yeah.
who is your favourite designer and why.
So is this like a continuation of the current topic? I mean, it's probably going to be these guys at this point.
So you say the Splotter guys are your favourite designers?
I mean, there are so many designers I like. Obviously, it's hard to pick favorites, but I mean, if you observe the way I behave and my enthusiasm, yeah, I mean, I think they tend to be doing something very different. I think they make games that they have a personality. I mean, there's something in common with all of them. They are actually not that complicated when you play them, and yet they are sophisticated.
They come from... Is sophisticated not a loaded term? Is sophisticated not...
They're
not an elitist term?
I don't know. Who cares? I mean, I think that they are the way they describe themselves. They're deeply strategic. Sometimes I enjoy Euro games. I think some of them can be a bit like soulless in a way. The way sometimes people criticize them for being. I don't know if you've noticed, but all Splotter games have a sense of humor.
Well, I think...
And there's something in it, there's something about them to me that I just find extremely compelling. I mean, they somehow marry theme and mechanic with this like wry sense of humor that doesn't upend the experience that I'm really attracted to.
Yeah, they are truly auteurs in a way that a lot of Euro games are soulless, and this is because within any art form, if you have a lot of something, most of it's mediocre, right?
Yeah, and it's getting to be a bigger and bigger space, so
Right.
more people are rushing in, and everyone is sticking their name on their game, even if you've never heard of them.
And so they should, I think. I think you should be recognised for the art. You should be
Fine.
You should be recognised for the art you create, whether that's in a positive or negative way.
You know that this was extremely controversial. I don't know who did it for the first time. It might have been Orson Welles or Hitchcock. But when filmmakers started putting their names on their films, like a film by so-and-so, this was controversial because it implies that they have somehow the greatest amount of creative input on their work. You might be able to argue this for some filmmakers. Like I think Kubrick did everything down to like grinding the lenses of his cameras, whatever. But a lot of filmmakers, they engage in a process that is so deeply collaborative, especially with their editors and their cinematographers, that it would seem to be overstating the case that it is a film by them. I mean, this is leaving out the actors, the screenwriter, whomever. I mean,
Who directed Beverly Hills Cop?
I don't remember.
It was Martin Brest. I happen to know that. But there are certain films for whom the director is unimportant. There are certain films for whom the director is important. I think you can draw that distinction in games. You have mass market games, and frankly, who gives a shit? Then you have sculpted works of art with intention, and then it's important that you know who that is, because they deserve the credit for being unique. So, I was having a chat with Drift Marlowe.
Great guy.
Great guy.
Assuming it's a guy.
And, you know, he once did some art for me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
In the old 5 Games for
I
Doomsday
remember.
websites.
I remember when we still had art.
I know.
It was so expensive.
So, he says, Reiner Knizia, baby. Mm-hmm. I can recollect all of this just from one conversation. Isn't it amazing?
I mean, the thing is, we now live in a world much like in archaic times where like an oral knowledge is passed down through an oral tradition.
Eidetic memory, that's what it's called, isn't it?
Yep.
Eidetic.
Eidetic. You can say it.
Okay.
We have eidetic memory, and we have, didn't we discuss once shitty cuneiform?
So I have dominionic memory.
By the way, did they ever explain to you why the leader doesn't want us writing anything down anymore?
It's never been explained. I just took it as ineffable genius on his part. His name's Ron in real life, you know. So, Reiner Knizia, baby, he said to me. Can't do the accent. His games occupy the most space on my shelves, and they fill so many niches, which sounds quite sexy. From two-player dueling to punchy Civ games, I have games for my non-gaming friends and games for my dedicated group. His forte, light rule sets that provide a lot of game, provide so much variety and fun and cover all the bases. Now,
is there a Reiner Knizia Civ game?
I don't know which one he's referring to, but I'm sure
probably.
So, I've discovered Knizia in the last couple of years because he was a name that hovered around that I didn't take any notice of because he just went very trendy when I first got into gaming. And now I've started to play his stuff. And while I will reveal my favourite designer later on, but while he doesn't quite get there as my favourite, he's different to Joris and Jeren in that...
Well, they're Dutch.
Well, exactly. Firstly. So they're Schötsche. So he is a craftsperson. He's not an auteur, he's not an artist. He is someone for whom it seems to me the greater meta meaning behind his work is not important. For him, does the game function as a mechanical artifact? And what's so wonderful about that is that his games take normal tropes and they twist one little modification, and it becomes this just different thing that is so much better than any iteration of that thing you've ever seen before. The guy is truly, I think, the greatest living designer. I think he's an utter genius, and he has defined what modern gaming is. And having met the guy a few times, you don't really think, because it's so easy to meet these people, somehow meeting them is devalued. And you need to think to yourself, my God, this man is a legend. He's a legitimate legend. And not just because he has this reputation, but because he continues to create these absolutely genre-defining things that are brilliant. Stevenson's Rocket is from the 90s. It's the best game in the last 10 years. It's absolutely incredible.
You still haven't played Tigris and Euphrates.
I still haven't played Tigris and Euphrates.
I mean, this is the game I most associate with him because, again, this is from like the 90s when I was playing this type of game. But I don't know. I mean, I don't disagree with what you say. I mean, he's like the most versatile designer I could think of. I mean, he's versatile and prolific. Let's say if I had picked Lacerda, he kind of only designs one type of game. Knizia seems to design every type of game.
Well, Knizia is a rebuke to the modern, overloaded, overly complex Eurogame, right? Knizia is, we have 5 fucking rules, and yet the depth you get in this is absolutely incredible.
But do you think he's been influential?
Absolutely.
I mean, I know, like these. We don't need to keep talking about the Splotter guys. I mean, I don't know how influenced they are. They seem to have been very influential in their turn for certain types of games, but I don't know how much they are influenced. And Knizia himself, I'm assuming, is influenced by nobody.
Knizia doesn't play other people's games.
Exactly.
The thing is with Knizia, is he influential? Absolutely. Little tricks on traditional games, these very tight, sort of simple Euros. They all come out of Knizia's. The Euro market comes out of Knizia's design in the 90s.
I mean, it's funny how the more games you play, the more they rhyme.
Right. And what's super interesting is I think that the new wave of sort of Euro designers making these big, complex games that have loads of moving pieces are sort of, is Knizia inspirational? Yes. They're fighting against that notion of cleanness and simplicity. They're going for depth using complexity. You take Alexander Pfister, for instance.
Oh, he would be very high on my list.
While I enjoy his games, I think they're hugely overwrought. I think they're utterly unedited. And they are...
You're hugely overwrought.
I certainly am.
And definitely unedited.
They take what I really love about games, that simple whittling away down to the core of the mechanics that are needed to promote the maximum depth with the maximum simplicity. That's not a preoccupation of Pfister. He doesn't give a fuck about simplicity. He loves complexity, and he makes games that I think fundamentally fail because I don't think he edits.
I think he's really innovative with mechanics. I mean, I always actually find games with innovative mechanics to be compelling. So I think where I would ding Knizia, I mean, who might have dinged Knizia? I am not worthy to lace his sandals, as it were.
Well, exactly.
Honestly, I've enjoyed many of the games of his that I have played, and not all of them. I don't think that I really love any of them. Tigris and Euphrates, maybe, although that could be nostalgia. We should play that.
Modern Art is genius. High Society is genius. Stevenson's Rocket is genius. Those 3 games are as good as anything. As good as anything.
It's like I can easily recognize that. So we're talking like personal interest, right? Like I recognize his genius. I mean, I think most of his designs are very tight, but that doesn't mean they're always for me.
Well, I mean,
like, this wouldn't be my favorite.
And this is a man who's designed over 600 games, so not all of them are going to be great, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is like, I couldn't possibly disagree with the choice. It's just not a choice I would happen to make, but I get it.
Well, I was having a chat with Maureen Riley, that Trek girl, Mo.
God, it was terrible how she died.
She's still alive. I was speaking to her just now.
Oh, you don't know, do you?
Let's scout over that. We're doing a recording for the public. I'm sure she'll be fine.
No doubt. I mean, such a mess.
She said, a vote for Uwe Rosenberg. Fields of Arla is one of my favourite games, and certain other game designer really got me interested in Nussfjord. I assume she's referring to Zombie Tony. I also love Second Chance as a way to zen out after a long night of gaming.
All right. I mean, I'm not surprised that Rosenberg has come up in the same breath practically as Knizia. Talking about games that rhyme. Rosenberg's games definitely rhyme.
When you say rhyme, you mean riff off each other, seem to be similar to each other.
Yeah.
You know, what's amazing about Uwe Rosenberg, so when we're talking about I missed out on Knizia when I first got into the hobby because he wasn't trendy, I listened to people who got into the hobby sort of 4 or 5 years after me, and none of them talk about Uwe Rosenberg. And Uwe Rosenberg was super hot when I got into gaming. He was like him, Stefan Feld,
Mr. Agricola
were the two sort of pillars of the Eurogame design that people talked about a lot. And while I think Uwe Rosenberg is patchier as a game designer, I think his recent output has been very patchy. These big sandbox games, and I'm not a sandbox fan. But my God, Agricola's astonishing. Le Havre is astonishing.
I still haven't played Le Havre or Agricola. Can you believe it?
Patchwork is astonishing.
When do people play them? Patchwork.
Well, we'll play Le Havre at the weekend.
We've got to.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
I bought a copy of Agricola when I first moved to Germany without knowing what it was.
Right.
In German, because I thought, I'm just going to learn this game. Translating this game into English and learning how to play it will be a way for me to learn German.
How's that going?
I mean, I'm still plugging away at it a little bit at a time.
But if we're talking about being nervous to meet people and sort of having that frisson, and it's not huge, but Uwe Rosenberg was one of those for me.
And you met him? Oh yeah, you did.
I've met him loads of times.
All right.
Because you meet him in Essen, and
I mean, he's definitely a legend. I mean, he's got stature, doesn't he?
Real stature,
proper stature,
especially
his
bell.
Ben's making a gesture right now.
But it's just. And of course, I played Nussfjord the other night, and it's just brilliant. I like his lighter, more efficient games.
Who did you play Nussfjord with?
Cthulhu.
So, have you played, what's this game called? Autumn Harvest or something? The game he did with Spielwiese.
Yeah, I know the one.
I can't even remember it. The one that then they did
it's
it
the
again.
follow-up to Cottage Garden.
Maybe I'm thinking, so the Cottage Garden and then there was Spring Meadow.
Right.
So here's the issue. After a while, they all kind of seem the same to me.
And it's true. The thing is with Uwe Rosenberg, because he reiterates on his former designs, some work and some don't. So don't bother with all of those polyomino games, apart from Patchwork. That's the best. The first one.
Patchwork's great.
Absolutely astonishing.
Great game.
But if you play his Harvest trilogy, they're all very different.
The ones I'm talking about.
So, no, his Harvest trilogy.
What is that?
That is Agricola,
okay.
Gates of Loyang, and Le Havre.
Okay, I've heard good things about all of these.
And they're all fantastic.
And Caverna is the follow-up to Agricola, which is
It's Agricola for people who don't like harsh, tight games.
I see. Okay, so... we played Glass Road, and to me this is like the epitome of a kind of Rosenberg game that I haven't seen bettered. Not even by Nussfjord is okay.
Nussfjord's brilliant.
It's okay.
We need to play it again.
Why is it brilliant?
Because it's tight, it's entertaining, and you get to the end of it and you have that nice warm feeling in your stomach, like when you play a game of Concordia.
I mean, I like the Elders, that whole thing.
So, let's look at since the turn of the century.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
Sometimes games are so good, they actually want me to they actually make me want to be able to speak sentences that are coherent. They actually make me want to visit the places they are about or learn more about the topic.
Give me an example.
Glass Road, just because I mentioned it. I'm interested in visiting the Bavarian forest now and seeing the glass blowers and that whole little subculture down there, just because of this game. I mean, there are other examples, right? I've ended up in places and I've been interested in them because of the game. I remember when I went to Carcassonne in 2008, and I went to the Castle gift shop, and I actually asked them why they don't sell the game there, and they had never heard of it.
Incredible. I wrote a long short story about the Cathars.
I love the Cathars.
And I set the story where? Do you think I set it?
Wait, Toulouse?
No.
No. The Pyrenees?
No.
Carcassonne?
I set it in Carcassonne simply because of the game.
Appropriate.
So, let's think about the century. From 2000.
Okay, so last century.
From 2000 to 2020.
Okay.
Who have been the important people who have formed the hobby in the last 20 years?
I mean, Isaac Childress?
Absolutely, yes.
Jamie Stegmaier?
I think so, Jamie Stegmaier, yeah.
I mean, I would put forth those two. What do you think?
Uwe Rosenberg.
In the last 20 years?
Agricola's 2006?
5? Yeah, okay.
One of the most significant, Matt Leacock.
I was going to say Pandemic Guy.
Because he didn't invent cooperative games, but he made cooperative games viable and exciting and desirable.
Maybe Bruno Faiduti?
Do you know who I think is possibly the most significant designer of the last 20 years?
Who?
And a person who doesn't have a storied history of many, many great games, but he has one game that stands astride the early 20th century.
And it's not through the ages.
It's not through the ages. It stands astride the early 20th century, and it has promoted the most copycats, I would say, in the hobby gaming world.
Oh. Maybe, can I have a clue? It's got to be someone you would actually think of in this vein.
It's a mechanic.
Is it someone I would think of in this
It's a
vein?
central mechanism for the game that is the most significant one. Let's give the people listening on the tannoy now 5 seconds to see if they can guess. And not one of them were fucking right.
Dead air is what they're paying for.
Exactly.
Are you thinking of Kalis?
No. Although he didn't invent worker placement.
Worker placement comes from this game.
Donald X. Vaccarino.
Okay, I would not have guessed.
The
But I
designer,
recognize the name.
the designer of Dominion.
Okay.
The game that invented deck building.
Well-
that has become so pervasive in hobby gaming. It's a huge thing.
Did it invent deck building? I mean, Magic
Absolutely.
the Gathering had deck building.
But as part of the game, as an active part of the game, as a mechanism, you build your deck and then play it. That's not Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering, it's not part of the game. You build your deck and then you play the game, and there are other mechanisms.
Sure.
You know, that
I do
drawing cards, buying from
I think it's still arguably like an elaboration of that concept.
But it's part of the game. Buying from the row, building the deck, thinning the deck. All of that is direct from Dominion, and it's basically not changed.
And you think that's the number one most influential mechanic?
I wouldn't say the number one most influential mechanic necessarily, but it's massive in gaming
This is a good follow-up guild question, Ben.
in the last 20 years. So, just to finish.
I think I actually have an alternative proposal.
come on then.
Not for a game necessarily. I mean, it might be Settlers. It goes all the way back to at least Settlers, and I've seen this and it comes up in Puerto Rico. I had the privilege of playing Leuvenherz recently.
Yeah.
It also Twilight Imperium. So games where everyone has something to do on every turn.
Okay.
You see what I mean? So
Who is the designer that then encompasses that?
I mean, it might be Teuber for all I know. I don't know who designed Puerto Rico.
Andreas Seyfarth, I think.
Yeah. You're right. This was a revelation to me because I was used to, even in like History of the World, I'm like used to someone else's turn taking a long time. I was used to, it's my turn, then there are 4 other people. I might as well go have lunch before it's my turn again. And then I played these games in which I wasn't the one driving the turn necessarily, but I always had something to do. And that to me was just astonishing.
Lead follow is astonishing when you think about it. It's so ubiquitous now, but you think about it, it's super astonishing.
Yeah, I think you expect it.
So, my favorite designer.
Yep. Is it the designer of Libertalia?
No, although I love Paolo Mori, I think his games are wonderful and always good.
Your friend Lewis and Clark guy.
No, because he's designed one game. How can he be my favorite designer? Well, 2 or 3.
I don't know what else he's designed. You're an encyclopedia of this knowledge.
I think it has to.
I'm a mere acolyte then.
I think it has to be the most innovative designer of the 20th century. The guy who can make heavy Eurogames. The guy who can make seemingly shallow party games. The guy who has taken the concept of the computer Civ game and made it into the greatest iteration of the Civ game across any media. The man is a true savant. He's a true auteur. His games are always astonishing. And also he's incredibly humble. And is, I think, surprised by... I mean, when I've spoken to him, surprised by the sort of adoration he gets, and that has to be Vlada Chvátil. I think he's the most original mind in gaming, but he's also the most accomplished. I think his games appeal to huge swathes of people, while at the same time never sacrificing on being brilliant games. I am sure he puts as much effort into Codenames as he does into Through the Ages, because Codenames is just so bloody good. It's almost flawless.
It's an empire
as a game. And it is an empire, and this is nice to see because it's an empire built on solid foundations, on a great game, not on bullshit.
Okay, let's run through a short list because I may not be familiar with all of his work. Through the Ages, Codenames, Tashkalar, what else?
Dungeon Lords, Dungeon Pets.
Dungeon Pets, right?
Duck Duck Goose Goose, or whatever it's called. I haven't played that.
Sounds great, though. These are the ones that come to mind, though.
Yes. My brain isn't working. It's late at night, but
when does it? No. So these are the games that come to mind to you when you think of Chvátil.
Yes, and I think he's designed the greatest example of a board game that's ever been made.
That's a lot to hang your hat on. I mean, I guess not much to hang your hat on. I mean, it's a good.
Kubrick barely made any films if you compare him to other directors, right?
Yeah, I guess.
He
made enough.
His ability to...
Is it really like the range between Codenames and Through the Ages?
Yeah, I think it's audacious. And then you have in the middle Dungeon Pets, Dungeon Lords, that are really great, solid Euro games.
But you're saying he's your favorite.
Yes.
Or he's the best.
I think they're not mutually exclusive.
No, of course not. I mean, I would almost be willing to admit that these guys, the Splatter guys, are not like the best, depending on your criteria for like best designed games. Like maybe Knizia would even.
What I love about
not my favorite.
What I love about Vlada Chvátil is he's able to design games that are not niche, but that are also brilliant. So I always said this about Stanley Kubrick, in that Stanley Kubrick is a genre director. He doesn't. We have these high-minded ideas about Kubrick, but he makes heist movies and horror movies. He makes war comedies and knockabout farces.
As opposed to what?
Well, because we expect our auteurs to not be genre people, right? We expect them to be like the guy who did A Marriage Story, to make these serious stories.
Like melodramas.
Yeah. Whereas Kubrick is a genre film director.
All the best art is genre art.
And he just makes incredibly elevated, brilliant genre films. Whereas Vlada Chvátil is the same. He's a genre artist. He makes midweight Euro games, he makes Civ games, he makes party games. But they're just the best. They're just brilliant. He is the Kubrick of board games.
You said something in a recent review about the irony that our favorite games are the ones we don't often play. When's the last time you played... We played Through the Ages recently, but how often do you play it? And when's the last time you played Codenames?
Well, Codenames actually fairly recently, but yes, these things...
I don't get to play my favorite games much.
Because this is the way memory works. Things mature and develop a greater grandeur in memory than they ever do when you're doing them. We are not an animal that lives in the present moment, even though people tell us we should. We live in the reflected glory of the past, and this is fine. And Through the Ages always lives there for me and always will.
That's Iron Dragon for me.
Well, anyway, that was nice.
It was a nice chat.
I'm going to go now, because I've got to pull up some parsnips from the garden for the leader's tea. I'm a little annoyed that he doesn't let anyone else eat the parsnips, because I love a parsnip. And what's your plan?
I was actually hoping to get a few of those parsnips to make the sacred gruel that we feed to the head of Meeple Pete.
I like my testes. I can't give you the parsnips.
Please don't let him get angry with me, Ben.
You mean his disembodied head speaks to you?
It doesn't speak to you.
Will Steve succeed in taking over the compound for the cult of the PT? Will Ben maybe develop a coherent worldview at any point in his life? Is there any point to all of this? I think you're thinking, this'll end at some point. Torture doesn't go on forever, even if it is torture. Find out next time on The Guild. Top-rated show in this compound.